Barkley's eyes were fixed in a 1,000-yard stare as the hulking monstrosity charged towards him, screeching and roaring. The hammerhead dragon now had its arms outstretched, revealing a huge 20-foot wingspan, appearing similar to a fighter jet as its body rumbled through the junkyard. The pain in the back of his head was unbearable, making it hard to think, hard to concentrate on the moment at hand, so he reached up for the back of his head. He winced as a shooting pain dispersed from the crown of his scalp. The feeling was warm and wet. He pulled his arms back around and took a second to look down at his now blood-soaked palm. A feeling of pure dread began to well up within him as a consistent thought dug further out of his subconscious. If this thing can hurt me so much without realising it, what will it do when it reaches me? He shot his eyes back up towards the creature, breathed sharply and pushed himself up from the ground using his other hand. He jumped out of the way, rolling along the ground, out of the way only seconds before the animatronic came careening into the pile of junk and discarded animatronic limbs. The impact was strong enough to send a shower of debris into the air, scattering it in every direction. Once it had all fallen, Barkley could breathe a sigh of relief. The huge machine thrashed and writhed with its head lodged tightly under the weight of the fallen heap of trash. It pushed against the sides of the mound with its single-clawed hands, desperate to pry itself away. Barkley was still catching his breath when he heard pieces began to clatter to the ground. He watched intently as more metal and scrap fell to the surface and the dragon's movement changed from pushing to digging. The animatronic began using its claws as though they were thin scoops, digging into the loose areas of the pile and ripping chunks away from it, while periodically attempting to pull itself away once more. With the fast-falling remains, it was clear the trap was not going to hold for long. He looked to the nearest exit, not far from where he had been standing, and began walking in its direction, when he heard the little girl's voice from across the room again. He turned back, to see the silhouette of a little girl standing in the brightly lit hallway. He couldn't see the details of her face, but knew that he had to follow her. He picked up the teddy again and this time clipped the tag to his belt. He ran in her direction, ignoring the pain in his head, and just hoped that she would stay still long enough for him to reach her. Just as he thought that, she disappeared around the corner and Barkley could swear he had seen that similar red streak as she disappeared. Still, he ran in the direction, water and oil splashing up his legs as he raced for the hall. Then he heard it, the cacophony of clanking, rattling and smashing, followed by a whirring, blood-curdling mechanical screech. Even though he knew it would get free, Barkley had not expected the hammerhead to escape as quickly as it had. He stopped in his tracks, a few feet from the exit into the hallway, and slowly turned his head to face the machine. It stood there, hands dangling in front of its lumbering body. Its body rattled and shook as though the machine was breathing heavily, with its tail flowing behind it. He seemed to be looking Barkley directly in the eye as if marking him for the hunt. Barkley's breathing became more laboured as he stared this machine down. The animatronic took a few steps and he shouted at the machine. Why? Why are you doing this? What did I do to you? You've already hurt me enough, you don't need to do this. I know what you are. He pulled his hair and continued with a scream. Ugh! Don't prove that the agency is right to hide you away from the world. The animatronic seemed to turn its head slightly at the response, as if acknowledging what Barkley had been saying. It still seemed to growl, but it was perceived to be more disgruntled and annoyed rather than angry, and there was the slightest flicker as its eyes momentarily flashed from yellow to blue. It stomped away, until the little girl's voice called out again. Help! Help me, please! They're trying to hurt me! They're going to hurt me! Please help me! Not only did Barkley turn around, but so did the hammerhead. Rushing in his direction once more, they both ran towards the exit, the hammerhead throwing its claws ahead of him as he tried desperately to both escape and reach the girl. Just ahead of the two there was a door slightly ajar, and Barkley could hear the little girl again. Come in here, we can hide, we can escape, please. The door opened more, as if beckoning him to lock himself inside, as if it was his only option. He ran inside and slammed the door shut, leaving him in pitch darkness. He heard as the hammerhead screeched and fell trying to reach the door. It was an immense crash, followed shortly by thudding footsteps and the sound of scratching and thudding against the wall. On the outside, the animatronic was pounding and clawing gashes into the wall, throwing its body weight against the wall in an attempt to break through. It shrieked and wailed, but Barkley could swear he heard a whimper or a cry between bursts of enraged shrieks and bellows. It also didn't seem as aggressive as it had been, or at least the aggression didn't appear to be aimed at him. Barkley stared further into the darkened room and wondered if he had done the right thing going into it. The room was pitch black, no windows, no light source, and Barkley found himself looking at his watch for guidance. He scrolled through the watch's settings until he reached the torch function, which emitted a bright blue light. He turned back to the door, looking for the light switch to the room. He ran his hands across the stone until he reached a small metal plate. It was smooth and glinted against the torchlight. He was hesitant to push it, but didn't have any other option. He pressed it further into the wall. In moments, a huge sliding metal door filled the doorway where the wooden one had been. Blue strings of light lit up on the walls, and a TV blared into existence on the opposite wall. Blue light emanated from it, and Barkley turned his watch off to conserve the battery. He found himself staring at it blankly, watching as the blue static flooded the screen, and white noise blocked out the sound of shrieks and pounding. Just ahead of him was a podium with a single red button. Connected to it was a series of wires leading in 4 directions, towards what appeared to be darkened windows. He looked the room up and down. Well, this doesn't seem ominous at all. The static on the TV began to move and form the shape of a man with a beard. Although no details were available, he was clearly wearing glasses, which were depicted as white streaks across where the eyes would have been. The blue background blazed red, and so did the string lights, and Barkley soon recognised who it was in the screen. So, I was right then, I did see you escape the smeltery. How did it feel seeing your animatronics rip each other to shreds? Haha, very funny, Night Guard. The engineer's voice blared, cutting through the ever-persistent white noise. You seem to be making jokes and think you're going to win because you escaped one skirmish. Yes, you may have survived the first 2 nights, and you do seem to be a lot more of a thorn in my side than I first thought, but I implore you, and I am so grateful for what you've given me. Oh, and what's that? Barkley replied. A reason to show you some of the more, let's say, experimental animatronics in my collection. What do you mean? His voice began to quake and rattle in his throat as that all too familiar sense of fear rose within him. That would be telling. The red button began to flash and drew Barkley's eyes directly to it. Why don't you press the button and find out? Teeth formed the shape of a smile on the screen. He pondered the notion but had a lot to think about. He had only had one interaction with this person and it was clear this was a trap. Was this engineer attempting to make him turn on the animatronics program to kill him? Had he done something to the girl? Was any of this even meaningful, or was it just to keep him trapped in the room? Barkley's mind became full of contradicting thoughts and ideas when he heard another voice. Please help me, he's trapped me in this room. If you push the button, he said he would let me go. There's a monster in here with me. That was enough. Without any further hesitation, Barkley slammed his hands into the button. For a second, nothing happened, but then the first light switched on, revealing a room where a shoddily built animatronic was working on an endoskeleton. Torch alight. Welding together 2 halves of the same faceplate, the animatronic working on it turned around and seemed to have eyes in its stomach rather than its head, and had varying arms hidden underneath its base, each equipped with varying tools that it hid in rapid succession when it was seen. Its top half appeared to hang limp and didn't even have eyes in its head, just scribbles in place of them. While timid, it approached the window. A second light flickered on, revealing a spindly but bulbous clown animatronic that appeared to be standing at the window, hands placed against it staring directly at him. Its hands were huge, with white gloves and pink fingertips. Pink balls seemed to make up the shoulders and hips. It had pink cheeks and 2 bulbous eyes in its sockets. On top of its head it had bat wings where the hair should have been, and while the majority of animatronics Barkley had faced were based on animals, this appeared very much like a strangely proportioned human being. It even wore blue curled shoes and appeared to have a lighter frame than the other animatronics he had faced in the past. When the third light came on, Barkley had to take a step back, almost falling from the shock of the machine. Similarly to the room the Hammerhead had been in, this room had been filled to the brim with scrap and discarded animatronic parts, varying eyes, legs, arms and random pieces of machinery. But it was what was in this room with it that concerned Barkley. Amongst the debris there was an amorphous, almost gelatinous pink goo that was skulking and carrying different pieces of animatronic waste. At that current point it had been carrying 4 arms and dragging them behind itself, but it appeared to be connecting the body parts and making something new from them. It was a dull pink colour, but it stood out amongst the monochrome of the greys and silvers of the animatronic parts. The one constant about its form was 2 glowing red eyes that appeared from eye sockets similar to camera shutters. The engineer spoke out over the static once more. "Oh, I'm sorry. I should probably explain the entities that you are currently looking at. Let's keep this brief though. I don't know how long it will take for that 4th light to switch on. Number 1, simply, is my assistant. They create the designs for the animatronic based on an AI that randomly picks from animals, objects, and elements. We aren't on good terms at the moment because they attempted to build themselves a new body without my express permission." The first animatronic appeared to quiver slightly. "Number 2, meet the Mime, a lightweight animatronic that can walk on thin air. If it can picture an invisible staircase, it will walk up it. If I program it to imagine a glass pane in front of it, it will act as though it is actually there. Take a look for yourself." Barkley stepped closer to the second room and swiped his hands across where the glass should have been. Nothing, meaning he was at the mercy of the engineer if that thing attacked him. Number 3, my second favourite experiment in this showcase. I'm calling it the Deadly Transforming Technological Organism, or DTTO for short. It's a colony of microscopic robots coated with a glue of my design. They will mimic the shape of any of the existing animatronics and can easily replace them if they become damaged. Not only this, but it is particularly violent because of its programming and has a tendency to build bodies for itself that are more suited to being weapons than entertainers. The machine had just finished building itself a body with 4 arms, 2 legs and a whip-like tail. Its microbots were welding together and merging with the existing metal, giving it a twisted and deformed look. It jumped for the window. Unlike with the Mime animatronic, this machine was actually behind glass. It cracked with the impact but wasn't enough to break through. It jumped again and leaped right through the glass and into the opening, stalking like a lion on all 6 limbs, twisting and jolting its head in short bursts with more of the pink ooze dripping onto the floor. Barkley and the DTTO circled each other until Barkley was stood with his back to the Mime animatronic. The engineer called through the screen, "Ooh, you're fighting already and I haven't even shown you the 4th machine." The DTTO leaped into the air in an attempt to hit Barkley, tails whipping and flailing. He managed to duck underneath and roll under the machine's body. It tried to claw at him on the way, but crashed into the Mime animatronic, which began sparking and flailing, trying to push the goopy animatronic away from itself. Barkley turned to look at the 4th room, which was now lit, with one corner still engulfed in shadows. A small entity walked from the shadows, about 3 feet tall with pigtails, thin arms, and a red flash of hair. "I believe you have already met my imposter animatronic." The silhouette of the little girl and the voice had been coming from this animatronic. Its eyes flashed into life and very smaller plates shifted and warped to show the animatronic's true form. A 6-foot animatronic with grey, black and red plating, a huge head of scarlet hair and a speaker built into its chest. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a fox. Barkley's heart sank in his chest. Was she ever real? The other animatronics continued to flail and fight in the next room. The Mime had been defending itself from the aggressive and dangerous attacks of the DTTO machine. The goopy animatronic was just angry and appeared to show more anger than any animatronic Barkley had ever seen. But he had fallen to his knees in a slump. "Answer me, engineer. Was she ever real?" He watched the imposter animatronic to see if it would attack, but it just stood there, analysing Barkley further. "Yes." The engineer's voice sounded quite hollow. "The likeness of the little girl came from my own daughter. Her voice and silhouette are the way she was the last time I saw her. I built the mime animatronic to entertain her, but before I could give it to her, her mother took her halfway across the planet and did not permit me to see her. But I've told you too much already. The engineer switched the screen of the TV off and turned off the imagery of there being a glass pane between Barkley and the mime. It was slightly more damaged now, but the mime animatronic picked itself up and carried itself to the window, where it had thought there had been glass. It reached its hand through, as if checking for itself, and then clambered over the wall. The goopy animatronic and it were backing Barkley into the door, when he had an idea to get it open. Similarly to earlier, Barkley placed himself where he wanted the DTTO to attack. It didn't jump but reared its tail and began whipping him with it. There were lashes and cuts dug into his arm, but he had to make it look believable. The animatronic reared back for the final blow and Barkley stepped to the side, letting the whip cut through the metal plate. It dislodged the door and he was able to escape into the hall. But not before the hammerhead animatronic had a chance to rip the door open enough to get through, launching the mime back into its room and squaring up against the DTTO animatronic. As the hammerhead stepped inside, it gave Barkley a nod for him to leave the room. Under his breath, Barkley thanked the machine and ran out into the hallway, unclipping the teddy from his belt and leaving it there. In the room, the Gooper machine reared back, jumping onto the hammerhead and attempting to tear away the plating covering its shoulder. When it had torn enough off, it used its microbots to eat away at the endoskeleton of the 18-foot tall animatronic. It shrieked and reeled in pain but continued to bite at the DTTO. Barkley heard their screams as he ran towards the exit. When he had escaped far enough away, he found himself in the same position he had been. The majority of the animatronics were ignoring him and he was able to walk around freely. He flipped a switch on his watch and put a call through to the agency. Serena, this is Ashton Barkley calling for Serena. Serena Arden, can you hear me? The cracking on the watch slowly turned to a voice. Ashton, is that you? Why are you calling at this time? Has something gone wrong? Are you okay? Has something gone wrong with the mission? Relief struck Barkley and a smile lit up across his face. I know it's only been 3 nights, but that is enough. The mission is still a go, but I need some assets collecting immediately tomorrow. We can't risk them being anywhere near the site on the night of the auction. They're too dangerous. Serena looked at the time, 4 o'clock in the morning. I can see what I can do, and Barkley, it's good to hear your voice. The call went silent. Barkley knew that it was short notice, but they needed to remove those experimental animatronics from the site as soon as they possibly could, especially the DTTO and the imposter animatronic. Barkley breathed a sigh of relief, looking around for a moment, but then decided to spend the next 2 hours in the office, where he could keep an eye on the other machines. In the basement, the DTTO had managed to damage the hammerhead animatronic. It crawled its way up the wall and climbed into one of the building's numerous shafts. The hammerhead animatronic, feeling every inch of pain caused by the goopy machine, limped away to the junkyard where it had came from. The wolf animatronic had sneaked away when Barkley escaped, and the first experiment, the one with all the blueprints, was attempting to fix the mime, which was bent and broken. When the morning came, Barkley tackled Serena, holding her and picking her up in the air. She smiled but darted her head to the other 3 operatives at her side, all sniggering and smiling. Don't you think we should be a little more professional in front of the newbies? Serena chuckled. Yeah, sorry about that. Care to introduce me? Barkley said through blushed cheeks and an awkward smile. These are our hunters, Agents Hank Javanis, Luke Schuyler, and Elaine Soren. The engineer watched through the eyes of the imposter animatronic as they made their plans to catch the animatronics. Thank you for the fresh parts, Barkley.